Yeah, absolutely. Dude, thanks for having me, Mark. Good to see you again, man. So, my career started out at the Naval Academy, went in for the class of 2010. On June 28th, 2006 was when my military career started. Did 4 years there, played lacrosse, commissioned, was a surface warfare officer at first, did a quick stint on a minesweeper wooden ship, Iron Men. And then after that, I was accepted for lateral transfer into the Naval Special Warfare community. Went through training, and then did just shy of 8 years total as a SEAL officer. And then I transitioned out of the military in July of 2020. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was afforded an interesting opportunity because I decided to do one of the nights and weekends, the executive MBA program out of Darden. And while I was there, it gave me the opportunity to kind of understand the landscape of what it was in the professional environment that one, veterans performed well, and then what was offered. I had a amazing mentor, a friend who had also transitioned from the army, and he was able to relay to me the things that he didn't take seriously enough in himself, or that he didn't take seriously enough when coming to terms with his impending transition that caused him a lot of heartache. Now he's super successful CEO of a company that is doing incredibly well, a name that actually some of us would be pretty familiar with. And he was able to distill it for me in the right ways. Like, here's how you look at, like, I mean, it was really, just like a godsend for having somebody like that to literally walk me and talk me through. And that brings up a bigger point of the sharing capacity. You have to be really ready to share. And that's in the networking capacity, and that's in the discovery capacity of what you're looking to do next, and offering people the opportunity to give you their inputs. Because you think of it like going to the doctor's office. You don't know what's wrong, so you have to give them every single symptom you're experiencing for them to deduce it, right? Or reduce, whatever the word might be. And I found once I started sharing more, people were able to put me in that certain direction that fit what I wanted to achieve and what some of those professional endeavors were that were conducive to my character. Yeah, so yeah, of course. It was really giving them, first giving them the pitch, right? The elevator pitch that we're kind of all taught to give in terms of like, hey, I'm Chris. I've led small elite teams in austere environments and, resource constrained environments. I managed, I was kind of relied upon to manage assets and allocate resources and work across a bunch of different cross, functional lines, a bunch of buzzword soups, right? That you would kind of give somebody else. And then somebody's like, okay, that's cool, but like, what do you want to do? What are you interested? I'm like, I like solving difficult problems. Like, okay, what kind of difficult problems do you like solving? And similarly, like we were able to understand, hey, would consulting work? Would finance work? Is it a startup environment? Because I hadn't really, understood that working at a 15-person startup is different working than a 1,000-person public company. Like I just didn't understand it. So then I started to understand, hey, I want a place that's pretty void of bureaucracy. I want a place that's moving pretty quickly that would give me the ability to both learn and perform, that I have a lot of upside mobility. A company that's in this type of stage that's looking to grow in this realm from, let's say, 60 people to 200 people, that gives me the opportunity to both perform, to have increased responsibility, and to touch many parts of the business. Um, Treating it more like a training opportunity than like a performance test. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that comes like you have to enable yourself to overcome a lot of the habits that you learn within the military about the vulnerability and about sharing. You don't want to make it seem like you're the last guy to be aware of something or girl, right? Um, and when you come to somebody about solving those problems, right, or solving issues, or what is it that you really want to put your life's work towards, you have to think of it as your life's work. Um, and it's much more of like an existential question than people give it credit for sometimes. You have an identity that you're wrapped up in, that in a culture of which you've been inculcated for so long. And now you're going to try something completely different, and you're going to be largely on your own, and you're going to be starting brand new, fresh. And something that I've seen that, is like another dynamic I'd love to touch upon later, but there's a huge difference between enlisted and officers getting out. And with that, it's like the officers are great at solving big problems and taking over existing issues. Enlisted dudes are so much more entrepreneurial. They are incredibly, like, they have first mover advantage in so many of the things that they start to like wish to accomplish, and they go from 0 to 1 so much faster. Like, and you see it at the like top tier levels. And once you start a business, you'll learn how to eventually run it and solve the problems and take over. And if you take over a large problem set, you'll eventually learn how it started, right? So it's good in that both of those gaps will kind of be filled by the way of experience. But you talk about the specificity factor, and that's how you drive in on it. Like, what is it that you want to achieve? What kind of life do you want to have? What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? Do you want to be working 80 hours, 100 hours right out of the gate, with people that don't understand team dynamics and only understand a number at the end of the day? Or do you want to work with people who have a vested interest in bringing a exploratory product to market? Much larger questions that I think vets just aren't equipped to ask those sort of questions. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So this comes from a friend who kind of exposed me to the dynamic who's a civilian, but he has been involved in the vet community and he has hired veterans for a really long time. He was at one of the largest private equity firms in the US, and he, in order to understand how to recruit, polish, but also break down, kind of right, to push away some habits that people had formed in prior businesses or prior lives, to be able to like fill in more closely with this particular firm's playbook. He went to some really high performing companies and organizations, one of which was a special operations unit. Started to understand their recruiting process, started understanding their screening, their finishing, their reinforcement, right? Their learning, their support structure. And in his interview process of looking for people to come possibly join his firm, he had started to realize very quickly that officers, right, we're not specialists in a lot of the ways in which we become professionals. We are tasked with managing people who are specialists and who are subject matter experts in a lot of different areas of which our entire responsibility will encompass. And it requires a lot of context switching. It requires a lot of very large views that are distilled from a commander that then you distill into your senior enlisted, right? For he or she to then communicate to those people on the ground or, like turning wrenches within your organization. And sometimes they do not have the luxury of being given a template to perform something. And so a lot of the time, it's how can I make the most out of what I have? And officers rarely deal with that because of the support structures and, sometimes the endless funding that revolves around being in the military. And so you see some enlisted dudes who will, and dudes, females, everybody, who will take that on board and who have created these incredible businesses, starting small or starting big, whatever it is, and just kind of backfilling, right? Um, Being able to place themselves in a way to, one, surround themselves with support, and two, to identify like a certain particular niche and how they're going to be that subject matter expert of that particular niche. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so sorry to interrupt. But you see it, I mean, there's a lot of security businesses from guys from my former community who have created. I think I can name a one officer who did it, but like the vast majority, right, are people on the enlisted side of the house. Um, there's another one who a great friend of mine who was an enlisted guy, went to a top five MBA program, went to a top five investment firm, excuse me, and then is now starting a incredibly impressive company in the defense realm that is solving a gigantic problem that'll be announced very soon. Um, but when you think about how to build a business, you have to be a subject matter expert in a lot of different things, and you have to be able to respond to them in timeliness. Right? It is of the utmost essence. Um, Especially in the kind of the small business space, right? That you and I have explored a little bit. And it's absolutely incredible to see how decisions will be made and resources will be and time will be allocated towards them and they can adjust. Whereas some of the other time you'll see people who were familiar, with the problem solving process of being an officer will like to pontificate of it, right? They'll create a COA analysis. They'll like plug through the entire MDMP to be like, yes, we should go with this supplier. It's like, wow. I mean, that's like those are days, weeks, months, resources, time, meetings, just that are at a loss. I mean, honestly, they're gritty. They're willing to be self starters, and a lot of the times they don't have to have anybody to tell them. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think a problem, not problem, but an aspect of it that plays a huge role is the delegation, right? As an officer, you're delegating the majority of of not large tasks, but of tasks that are required, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, you're still doing your piece, but in terms of being hands-on with a lot of these problems, it's the nuances and subtleties of these individual problem sets that create those like that huge change in output, right? Just like if you're a major league hitter, you would rather see 1,000 at bats than 500, right? As many pitches as you can see, you're going to become better. And it's the same thing. As many looks as you get in solving those issues, um, is going to just expand your toolkit. And I think that's a piece of it, and that's again why you'll see officers being able to solve big problems and to be able to absorb an issue, right, or take over rather than creating a solution out of simply nothing. And at the end of the day, you're enlisted to drive those perspectives for you. I mean, you're not seeing what's down in the engine hall. You're not seeing what's on the other side of a ridge. You're not seeing sometimes what's coming through a periscope. There's a lot of different times in which most of the time officers rely on the perception and the analysis of those directly underneath them. Yeah, dude, I need to turn on my notifications really quick. I'm sorry. Rookie move. Okay. um yeah, no, that's a great question. So what I had realized is a lot of the times when I had mentors in the military, once I got to their level, right, I was an O3 and it was an O4, right? Or it was in going into training and it was those who just finished training. At that time, you realize you learned a lot more than they had told you. And you don't want to say you necessarily surpass your mentors, but I think you're doing it right if you are. So I looked and I said, okay, who are some people that I cannot surpass in the next 20 years? Who are some people that have an entire lifetime of experience across different careers and different industries, whose like brains I could pick, whose advice that I'd really benefit from. So I took a very asymmetric approach in terms of reaching out to these individuals. Mind you, this was the first half kind of started before COVID, and then the lockdown hit right as I was starting my skill bridge, which is like a whole different animal. But it was targeting, right? How can I access these people differently? How can I tailor an approach that is going to want to incentivize them to to respond? So I started with, no asks, right? I would offer a something that I think that would help them from research I've done. Internet sleuthing, right? I mean, social media stalking, like, oh, this person married to who? Okay, does she have an open Instagram account? Great. Okay, she's a family person. Oh, there's going skiing. Oh, he's going hunting. He looks like they're a big fitness family. Like, oh my gosh, this is great. Like the lockdowns happen and people are wondering what to do about a gym. So it was a very easy for me to pull up a PDF that had 20 different, at home workouts. And I was like, hey, love your stuff. I think I could really benefit from it. Here's my history. By the way, well, so before this, obviously, before any ask, hey, seems like you're into fitness. You have this amazing career. I bet the lockdowns are not too fun for you right now. Here's an awesome thing I had before. Be well. Then they would respond like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome. Thank you so much." Like interesting background. And if they didn't ask a question most of the time, then I would beckon it with like, "Yeah, hey, how are those working for you? Um, I've, found this to XYZ to work even more." And then just keep offering, right? Like here's some supplements that, you could use, or here's some bands. Same thing with a guy who I saw who was a big hunter, right? Or who's just getting into it, like an outdoorsman. And I just kind of like cracked his egg, being like, "Hey, I just saw you bought a bunch of Patagonia stuff. Hopefully bleep that part out. Don't want to, poop on anybody. Hey, you bought a bunch of this. It's not going to last you where you're going. I could promise you. Here's Arc'teryx. Here's why they're better." And explain it to them. Like, I promise the extra few bucks will pay for itself in an investment. And they're like, "What? Like, how did you know this? Like, this is so weird." Like, no, no, it's cool. It's cool. I just want to be friends. Um, yeah. Oh, nice. I will. Yeah, I think he's incredible what he's done with the company too. Um, no, 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 all good, all good, all good. So, so yeah, so I picked these people, and it was better if obviously I had a connection or some sort of connection or anything to them, but there was a few that I absolutely didn't. Um, and something also was showing them that I had already taken their advice, right? Hey, I saw this awesome article, this awesome video, this interview that you did. You spoke to X, Y, and Z. I tried implementing it in my life this way. Here's how here how I was successful, but also here's how I still haven't been able to overcome something else, or here's how this did not work for me in my particular situation. And true professionals want to see feedback about the advice that they're giving. Um, and then to cultivate these relationships and continue on them, I made it as simple as I could for them to be a mentor to me. Um, I wouldn't go with them with a, "Hey, I have a problem." It was, "Here's an issue that I've been having. Here's how I've tried to solve it. Here's how I characterize it. Here are the three ways I'm thinking about going about it. And here's a little bit of context for each of those different approaches that I have. Any thoughts are greatly appreciated." And you have some like very stern old men types and old female types who have just been served their entire lives by entire staffs, right? So they're just like, "That's your decision to make. Why are you bothering me with it?" So sometimes they would be curt or very like a little terse in their responses, but that's helpful, right? It was like, "Well, you obviously want choice two." It's like, "Yeah, I'm leaning towards that a little bit." It's like, "Okay, solved." It's like, "Okay, cool. Thank you very much." Right. Or one of my favorites was, "Hey, I'm negotiating this this compensation package. I feel like it might be a little light, or I don't know if it's really aligned with what I want to achieve. What's your feedback?" Ask for more. Genius. Because it's true, right? It's like, dude, it's like, just come on. Like, yeah, you know what you want. You're saying what you want. Like, why are you asking me? It's like, sorry, sorry, sorry. Like, you're totally right. Um, but then there's others, right, that like want to sit shotgun with me. It's like, what's like a sick deal you got coming up, or what's something that you're trying to negotiate? And you kind of bring them in, like, nah, man, tell me, show me who that is. Okay, hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna do some digging. I'm gonna find out more about this guy. I'll let you know. It's like, I don't need to know about more about this guy. Okay, like, thank you so much. But like they feel like they're in the seat, right? Or they're like, hey, what time's your call today? It's like, it's at noon. It's like, okay, text me. It's like, I can't text and be on it, but I can definitely let you know after the fact. It's like, okay, let me know as soon as possible. It's like, it'd be better if I could be on it. How's it going? It's like, I told you I can't text you during this. But you get some that are really like incredible. And you can't have uh you can't be altruistic about it. Some will be amazing family people, amazing business people, maybe not the best leaders. Some will be amazing business people and entrepreneurs and thought leaders, and they might have a destroyed family life, right? Some might have a unbelievable family life. They might have like an incredible reputation as a leader, but they're super unhealthy. So you also have to be careful in this in picking those parts that you want to most closely align with what your mentors might have, and that's why I think the whole tribe of mentors um, like situation works best. Yeah, yeah. I think you hit on a few key things there, and one is the failure rate, right? Like in the military, a 20% failure rate, like that's terrible, right? Like that is unacceptable. But like cold outreach and pitches and sales, if you're landing 80%, I mean, you are minted, right? Like you are in the top 0.0001%. And so I think that that's a perfect example of it, right? And reaching out and being like unconventional with it, be completely different from anything they've ever received. And something interesting that you also hit on so well is that the upper and lower bounds, right? That's something that I always stress upon. That is so one of the like five biggest differences from getting out of the military into the civilian world is you are constrained um, by rate and rank, right? Your job and your rank, you have a ceiling and you have a floor. You will not make decisions below or impact, below impact. Yeah. You will not make decisions or conduct actions below, and you will not make decisions and impact above, right? People will ask you for your opinion and your analysis, right? And your perspective if you have like a great, military structure and like respectable leaders. But if not, like you are hard assigned between that like very thin layer. Whereas on the outside, you own everything from top to the bottom. You own everything before it gets to the customer. and all the way up to what the CEO reviews. Because a lot of people will pass along, but they won't touch it. They won't change it. They'll review it maybe. Like you own a lot more of that. And then the final one, which you hit on so well, is the lead time portion of it and who you reach out to and how you reach out to them. I mean, if you put it into like like a synonymous situation, imagine imagine your wife, Mark. Imagine, but like a year before you met, she's like, "Hey, in a year, I'm gonna really want to date you. Can you let me know what things I should get better at, or what things like you'd want me to know, or what things I should maybe to research to, maybe give me a shot at this?" And it's like, wait, what? You do the same thing with jobs, right? Like, hey, I'm getting out in a year, and I think you have a really cool industry and a cool product and a cool company, and it's taken me aback because of X, Y, and Z. Like, I'd really be interested to, be a part of that team. What are some things or some resources that you could send my way, for when I transition, I could, have a shot at, you know, either being a part of the industry or being a part of the company. And people will like fall back in their chair because recruiting is a really, really hard thing to do, especially high quality people. And even like those very high, um, like high achieving jobs where you're like, dude, I have to do something else out of the military before I go into venture capital because there's, you have to have all these criteria. It's like, no, you don't. And that's exactly what happened to me for both private equity and venture capital. I was like, I want to do one of these. I want to go into finance so bad. Here are these two firms that I think are super cool, and I'm going to start engaging with them a year and a half out. And one was like, yeah, buddy, it doesn't work that way. It's like, cool, that's fine. I'm in an MBA program. Why don't you tell me what I should be learning and who I should be talking to? And I'm happy to share with whatever and however I can. And I was super fortunate to be able to land, um, some skill bridge opportunities and then job offers. Yeah, 100%, right? It's doing the pre-work, it's doing the research, finding out something interesting. Something that got me into the door everywhere I went was in my informational interviews, the first early stage interviews for those of you who haven't heard it before. I would wait for them to ask, I would love this question where they would say, "Hey, so I'd like to tell you a little bit about our company." And I would just stop them in their tracks and be like, "I've actually done a little bit of research. I would love to tell you what I think you do. And then you tell me if where I'm wrong." And they're like, "Love it. Like, go ahead." um, it would be great, right? And then even if it's like far fetched, like what I started to do then was like different opportunities. Like, hey, I see you're a defense tech firm and you're trying to move into this particular area. Here's something that was released by, the National Defense Authorization Act, or here's something that was spoken about in Defense One, which is, a line of funding that somebody's, pursuing to expand this, which might align with yours. I'm not sure. And it's like, yes, like I'm going to send this to our capture team. um, the pre-work is a huge thing that'll get you in the door, in all those places because they just, you have to show that you're proactive, not reactive, because they know you can do what you're told to do. You wouldn't have lasted in the military that long. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's a feedback in the company's messaging at the end of the day if you have it wrong too. They're not gonna get mad at you for what you've read or what you've understood from their marketing campaigns. I did have one company be like, "Did you read that somewhere?" I'm like, "A Reddit forum?" And they're like, "That's not good." I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I say a no-no word?" And they're like, I think that's kind of one of the images that we're trying to stay away from." It's like, "Oh, why?" And then again, it becomes like this totally different conversation, and then you just push it back into understanding working in a cross-functional environment, being a leader, and of different people, and then anytime you can take it back to your strengths, it's helpful. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. When I started entering into the workforce and like talking to people about how what my experience was and how it was so relatable and all my skills were super tangible and how I could, relate each of those distinctly into something I could do for them. They have completely, not completely, but there are very different metrics at play, right? I think you had it on your Instagram account one time. Um, where or maybe it was sit reps to steer costs, but it was, when the guy's asking, "Hey, yeah, I'm a captain, but I'm really thinking about staying in until I get command and then retiring at 20." It's like, I have no idea what a lieutenant colonel and what a captain are, but I do know that I don't hire 45-year-olds. Right? And it's and age isn't like it's a thing, right? I know it's not supposed to be, and people won't admit to it, but it's a very real thing. And then similarly, you're going to be an individual contributor the day you get there, no matter what you've done in your life before. You are going to be expected to contribute and prove yourself competent before you can prove yourself responsible. Um, but similarly, just because you're not given a team to manage does not mean that you will likely gravitate towards the leadership position. Um, because you'll find yourself in situations where it's like crunch time and you are with 10 of of your other contemporaries in your new company, and you'll realize like, oh my gosh, we have to sit working on this platform to make sure it doesn't crash for the next 48 hours. It's like, okay, well, we can do this. And then it's like, great, here's a watch bill. It's on. I put it in everybody's Slack on Excel, write it down. We're good. We'll cover it. It's fine. I'll take the midnight to 4. Like, no big deal. And you start to realize you enable people to work so much faster because everybody is so very afraid to be seen for their wrong decisions. That like that's a huge piece that you can always contribute. um, but then similarly, um, you know, in my second week, I had somebody say to me, like, oh, introduce me and say, oh, here's Chris. Chris, you were in the Air Force, right? And I was just like, yep. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm like, fine. Nothing wrong with the Air Force, right? But it's just like, obviously, people don't know who you were and who you are now. Um, and, you have those like big reminders. Um, and then similarly, you have to understand the politics or the bureaucracy or the whatever it is, you know, the details at play within your new organization. Because sometimes, you'll see some areas where they will promote you based on your capability and based on your competency. I mean, with rapid succession, right? I mean, I talked to a guy when I was getting out who was at Flexport, and he had been promoted 4 times in a span of 10 months just because of he was able to solve these like large scale issues, and he was able to solve issues downstream. Like, hey, I solved this issue, and then realizing this is probably going to be another issue in the next 3 months. So here's the proposal and how we like shift that. Yeah, we're gonna have to put up resources early on to do it, but we're not gonna have to pay nearly as much in 7 months as we would now. It's just like, oh my goodness, like that's amazing. Um, and you know, I feel bad say not feel bad, but another thing is like don't call yourself a chief of operations when you're like an executive officer, right? Or like don't call yourself an operations manager when you're a platoon commander. Say that, but then whatever you do to explain it, like put it into civilian terms. Because we'll still get like 4 and 5 page resumes from people who've done 6, 7 years in the military. And it's like, hey, we need to distill this a little bit more. Like, you need to tell me your story. You can't expect me to read your story. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think those are some big like components. Um, but the tough part, at least for me, I would love to hear like what it is for you, what it was for you. Um, was what are those skills that I need to like rid myself of and push to the side and not think about again and put them in my locker box with my coins and patches, right? And what are the skills that I should be really indexing on to prove myself as a professional and to prove myself as a contributor? And those are still difficult for me to like to navigate one way or the other. Yeah, no, it's but it's just some other stuff to kind of consider. Like it's valuable. You're valuable. You've done a lot of awesome things and they're not 100% transferable or translatable. But if you learn how to make a pizza, I'm sure you could learn how to bake some banana bread, right? Like there are some crossovers with stuff that um, it becomes what do you want to become proficient at and what interests you, what gives you the energy to kind of do those extra hours, those extra reps. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're good at doing really sucky things and not saying a word about it. Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah. Yeah, and that actually pulls into one where I did not do this well until very recently, and that is set the boundaries. Because you are a yes man, right? I mean, yeah, you'll look at things and you'll do an analysis. It's like, yeah, we can't really do this, but we'll figure out another way. Or like, yeah, that's way too high of risk. That's just like that's not something that we can like pull off. Let me get back to you on it. But now it's like people will ask you to do stuff, and it's not like most time it's not risky. It's not going to cost people their lives, right? It's not going to cost the company, and you're just like, oh yeah, yeah, cool, yeah, no, 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 we can figure that out, like we can totally do it. And then you realize like, dude, this is like not accretive to anything else we're trying to accomplish, right? Or it's like, hey, I get you forgot something, but it's Saturday at noon. It's like I like this is something that can absolutely wait, right? It's the old, if it's what is it, if it's an emergency it's really important, and if it's important it's really an emergency. No, that's cool, man. That's an interesting one. I like yours a lot. Dude, that's a good catch though. Mhm. Ooh, the best and or worst. I would say the worst was amphibious base Coronado. It was pretty terrible. Like during training, like it was, yeah, it was not the best. There's some food quality issues. Um, no, are you kidding me? No, it's like we're not trying to keep you around, Mark. Like we're trying to get rid of 90% of the class. Um, yeah. And then I would say the worst that or no, the best that I ever got to was oh uh buyout Baghdad in the green zone. Baghdad, like in the embassy area. That was ridiculous. And you knew it too because there's more like generals and full birds than I had ever seen in my entire life than in one afternoon at that chow hall. That was ridiculous. I think I would go in like first cut of lunch and then I would come back like 3 hours later at like right at the end, you know? So I would just like double up and just I mean I would go you're only on the ground there for like 16 hours maybe, but yeah, I remember doing some double doubles there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's insane, man. Yeah. Um, yeah, Union 3, that's what I was yeah, same thing, green zone. Interesting how the tides turn, man. Yeah. Yeah, we reopened up in the north. We reopened or not reopened. We opened Uday Hussein's um private casino. Yeah, we made it a one of our fobs. I mean it lasted I don't know, probably like 3 years, but I think we yeah, finally ended up shutting it down, but yeah, super interesting, man. Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. It's awesome talking to you, man. I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, it's a whole different life that you lead. I truly believe that. And if you ever try to recreate what was once had, um, you're going to end up disappointing yourself. And it's going to be rife with frustration and confusion. Um, so reach out to your friends, those in uniform and out, and share. Like, be open with what you're experiencing and some of those headwinds that you're facing, and you'll realize very quickly the people around you have been looking for a way to help you, and you've finally given them that opportunity. So I really implore you all to use your network, use your friends, use your family, and be open about what it is that you want out of life, and they will inevitably help you get there. Thank you, man. Have a good one.